everybody, welcome to Community Spotlight. And as you guys already know, my name is Dan. I'm the director of the NorCal Cosplay Ball, and tonight's guest is the wonderful Yamini-chan. Say hello to our audience.
Hi, how are you doing tonight?
Hope you're doing well. How's the lockdown been treating you?
Oh, it's been going good. Just got my groceries last night and just feeling cute today, so here I am.
Awesome, awesome. Well, it's glad to hear that you're staying healthy and whatnot. If you'll have us for tonight, I would like to ask you some questions about the cosplay community.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Okay. Before we start, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
No problem. Hi guys, my name is Yami. I'm also known as Yamini-chan on Instagram. I joined the cosplay community for about 3 years, and I really like cosplaying characters that have dark pasts, so that's where I chose Yamini, meaning darkness. And I like seeing characters transform to become kinder and stronger people, so that's why I'm Yamini. And I've been a part of the cosplay ball for a lot of their events. I enjoy dancing, and I love how they represent promoting healthy lifestyles. And yeah, and on my non-cosplay life, I work in healthcare. I promote workout in eating well in my cosplay Instagram, and I'll be applying to med school next year. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So, um, my first question would be, what was your gateway into this community? Like, was it being a part of like the anime fandom? Was it video gaming? Because I know you're part of that community too.
hmm
Was it like a little bit of both? Like, tell us the story, like the beginning, the origin story.
Yes, yes. So I actually got into gaming more so, and I do love anime shows, but for some reason I just enjoy cosplaying game characters. So my very first gathering was about 3 years ago at the Christmas in the Park, and I cosplayed as Futaba from Persona 5. And then I cosplayed Nier Automata and Final Fantasy, and but I also cosplay anime too, so it's mostly video games, yeah.
Awesome, awesome. When it comes to cosplaying, do you have a particular role model? Like, is there anyone that like speaks to you like, oh, I want to be like this person? Like, who do you admire the most? And has this particular role model have they have they exuded a quality that you try to exhibit in your everyday life?
Yes, definitely. So my cosplay role model has to be Kamui Cosplay. And what I love about her is two things, but I'll keep it short. She creates such a positive and inclusive voice whenever she posts to her fans. So I recall that she was compared often to sexy and boudoir cosplayers, and she voices that she doesn't like that because honestly, how can you tell people that a cosplayer is better than the other based off the content they have? And she says that she also does revealing sexy cosplay as well. So she's actually dedicated a post to tell people that it's okay to cosplay boudoir. It's okay to cosplay sexy, and it's also okay to cosplay cosplays that require a lot of craft, like armors and stuff. We should try to be a community that includes everybody and to not put them down, and bring everybody up together, because cosplaying is in itself very expensive and a lot of time put into it, and you have to be really hardworking to do either boudoir or crafting cosplay. So that's what I respect her so much. It's just how she voices that cosplay, you can cosplay however you'd like, whatever you'd like, and there's no right or wrong way to cosplay. And also I love how she shares her knowledge of crafting LED cosplay props and armor cosplay. So that's really cool. Love Kamui cosplay. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. On the same topic of role models, would you say there's ever been a fictional character? It doesn't even have to be from like anime or gaming, just like somebody that, just really stands out to you. Like you wake up thinking, what would this person do? How can that be a part of my life?
Oh yes, definitely. I'd say like this fictional character I love so much. It's actually from Sailor Moon, but not Sailor Moon. It's Sailor Jupiter. Love her. She's my role model that I wake up every day. She's amazing because one, she cooks, cleans, works out, and goes to school. So that's like, whoa, she's like powerhouse, like check mark, check mark, check mark, like everything. She's amazing. This is my favorite. So whenever I wake up every day, I was like, hey, Sailor Jupiter, she would probably like make sure she makes her lunch, and it actually helped me a lot with trying to be proactive and working out, making my own meals, eat healthy, go to school, and work and stuff. So she's all the above. So I always look up to Sailor Jupiter whenever I bring out my day. Yeah.
Awesome. So, you mentioned being in school. You are applying to med school pretty soon. So,
Mm-hmm.
as someone that is presently pursuing academia, like how does cosplay, or rather your cosplay life, factor into your work-life balance? Like, some people, for instance, they see it as this is what stops me from burning out. Do you relate to that? Do you see it more as like oh my dream at some point in life was to be like this big cosplay star, and like all the other stuff, all the other facets in life are kind of a means to that. Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, so I do see that as somebody who does cosplay a lot, I do like cosplaying as like a hobby, not really something that I do see myself in the future, though it would be nice, I do have to admit, maybe in the side, but my dream's always been to be a doctor, though I do see cosplay as a hobby I just enjoy doing. And while I think there are times where I feel burnt out in studying. That's where cosplay brings me back that energy. It's just, it kind of plays around with my creative juices in my mind that I always exercise facts and knowledge and stuff. It's just good to have cosplay to just make you feel well-rounded. But as for if I do cosplay too much, I do have those burn down periods too. So it's just, it's good to have a nice balance of everything. Yeah.
Interesting. So, I mean, this might be a difficult question to answer, but
Mm-hmm.
if you ever were in a scenario, and I can relate to this myself,
Mm-hmm.
if you were in a scenario where you had to drop things from your life, like let's say you had to choose between career, education, cosplay, like how close to the chopping block, like not permanently, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
how easy is it for you to shelve that? Because for me, growing up, being really involved in the anime community and gaming community, it got to a point in my life where I had to make a decision and drop something cold turkey. So I actually ended up having to leave the fandom community myself, like cold turkey, for almost 5 years. Like it got to the point where it's like, okay, I have my education and I have my dance career, and then I also have all this stuff. And I know for some people that's like a non-option. It's like, oh, if I don't have the stuff that makes me happy, then I can't even go on through the other stuff. So, what is your take on that?
Yeah, so I do see, while I do enjoy cosplay so much, I do have a more the pedestal school and pursuing medical school in general. And it's not that I don't like cosplaying for that regard and that I prioritize school over cosplay. It's more of it's something that resonates deeply in my heart since I was a kid that I want to be a doctor. And growing up from that, watching my favorite anime shows and playing my favorite video games, it just makes me feel so alive cosplaying and having a lot of fun being these characters that I enjoy so much. So I actually have done a cold turkey, a half a year hiatus from cosplaying just to focus on school. I don't regret it. It does hurt. It does at some points in my life. It's like, oh, I really do miss it. But you know, sometimes you gotta prioritize things in your and all over again, and then you'll come back to it as if you haven't left. So yeah.
Yeah. It's almost, do you almost feel like there's a little bit of a sense of an accomplishment that you didn't have to leave it? Because that's a very, very, it balancing anything is a very, very delicate process. Like, uh,
Hmm.
like again, like when if I were to answer the question myself, like it was seen as like I had to like completely clear up this big block of time so I could commit to it. So there's occasional times where I'm kind of like, okay, like I regret not like living a little more. So I guess like kind of going further into the topic, do you feel like the fact that you're able to still continue and not have to take particularly long hiatuses, like you don't have to, like you didn't have to leave for like years, do you almost
Hmm.
kind of feel like this contributed to your character development in a sense?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I learned so much in just learning time management. And actually, after I got back from hiatus, I realized I have terrible time management. I learned that I need to get and try to fix that. So I got myself a planner. It's great. But yeah, it does, it really does give you character development, trying to balance so many things like work, school, cosplay, life in general. So I think it's really good to exercise time management through cosplaying. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's definitely good advice for people because I imagine there are a lot of people out there that struggle with this. This
Hmm.
community especially seems to have a lot of younger individuals as members. So people that are like, we're not even talking about undergraduate years. We're talking about high school, and it's a tricky thing. Like we do have that issue of time management, but I guess one of the things that people watching can take away from this is that you can kind of use hobbies as an incentive, or maybe you can even see it as the reward for successful time management. Like you can almost kind of see it as an exercise in time management. So, hopefully people can listen to these, to what you're talking about, learn from your experiences, and kind of get their own insights on, okay, I want to be able to do these things. Like, how can I do it? Like, how can I be the person that, in a sense, does it all?
Yeah, definitely. To add on to that, I do feel like after studying for a while, it's good to reward yourself, or else you'll just also be burnt out with studying. You know what I mean? So it's just really good to try to like treat yourself as like it's okay to take breaks. It's okay to be really serious as a student, but also like having that balance of studying and cosplay. It's really important to know that it's okay to reward yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting topic as well. I myself, growing up in an Asian American household,
Hmm.
um, sometimes for one reason or another, we are almost kind of conditioned to feel guilt whenever we
Yeah.
indulge ourselves. Like, is that something that you have experience with?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I grew up in a Filipino household. So it's funny because every time my mom says, "Oh, you need to study, you have to be a nurse, you need to be a dentist, you need to be a doctor," it's really funny. I joke around this, but it is true for most Filipino households. But yeah, I do feel guilty when she would just see me playing video games or watching cartoons or anime, and she's like, "What are you doing? Why are you not studying?" And it does make me feel that negative attachment to whenever I indulge in just simple, like maybe 5-10 minutes of just checking Farmville on Facebook or whatever. Like I feel guilt, and it's really unusual. When I had to train myself that it's okay to take breaks, and I realized growing more in the years that if you do not take any breaks, it does take a psychological toll on you. You start to feel really burnt, like not burnt, but also you become not as efficient. You get really stressed, and you can't really think or focus at all. So it's really really important. And I think the topic of mental health and self care is something that isn't really discussed too often in and studying in those households. So it's kind of it's really good to study and be very serious about it, but it's also very important to try and like recognize that it's okay to cosplay, do video games when you know that you can do both. But I grew up knowing that that's a bad thing, so it's like yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky. So it's almost like, I guess, I mean, as you know, I have a daughter, and one of the things I think about constantly is like, how do I take the good parts of my own upbringing and apply them, but also relate to the side of me that, wishes that I was able to indulge a little more. I guess, we could almost kind of summarize it as it's okay to indulge, but indulge responsibly. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yes, definitely. I feel like with every act of um, tasks that you completed, it's really good to kind of reward yourself in a very small indulgence, like eating chocolate or like browsing the internet or whatnot. I see it as something that it refreshes your mind, that you don't have to always look at a book, and after a while your eyes get really tired. You also feel like you need to, take a small rest or break from that. So I think there's always a good um, way that people can just see indulgences as not just like, oh, you're just wasting time. No, you're actually taking care of yourself in a way. Like you're refreshing yourself, you're trying to take a break and refocusing, and that's all part of learning too. So I think that it's not wrong to try and indulge yourself every so often. Yeah.
Okay. And I guess the last thing I would want to ask in regards to this particular topic is for people that constantly have to deal with that guilt. Like, has there been any particular advice that's been helpful for you that you find other people might not necessarily have heard? Because like it's one thing to just tell people it's not like you don't have to feel guilty, but sometimes it's one of those things that's easier said than done.
Yeah, definitely. So, as for, let's say, example, I have to do an essay and it has to be done in a week. And in the meantime, I also know that I want to work on the cosplay. By the end of this month, I have a convention. So, my advice to those people who are balancing those two facets of life is that to break down every task a little bit each day does go a long way. Think of it as cosplaying. Like every little day, you can't just, con crunch. But even though people do that anyways, it's usually when you break up your days each day, you end up getting a better cosplay. So if you study or complete an essay into little sections each day, you'll have a better outcome. So in that way, it keeps your mind off from stressing out too much to last minute, and that after you complete your task for that part of the day, then you can be like, okay, I have an hour to myself to do whatever I want. I can cosplay, I can work on stuff. So I think that way you can keep yourself on track while you can keep your mental health in check as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like really good advice in the sense that you're basically giving people a way to kind of measure like how responsible they're being or how much they're indulging, like putting like quantifying the balance in a sense. So that can definitely help because just like if you're following a tutorial, you have to like whether you're cooking or crafting or doing anything, there's like a recipe, there's a formula. So I guess when we apply formula to work-life balance as well, it can, at the very least, even if you don't see a lot of immediate result, it at least gives you a metric to compare day by day. Cool, cool, cool. In terms of like your cosplaying and your social media presence, do you ever kind of tell yourself like there's a specific impact that you like wish to leave in the world? Like, how like sometimes people say like, what do you want your gravestone to say? Like, what would the answer be for you?
Yeah, so as I am a person who loves medicine and everything science, I really hope that I can combine the two and that overall I can create a positive impact in the cosplay community, letting them know that it's good to maintain your health and that it's important to get that sleep, eat well, and to be kind to yourself. And I know that there's a lot of people in the cosplay community that I've seen that are definitely have a lot of insecurities about their body, their face features, and that's something that I kind of want to combat. I just want to say, hey, you're beautiful, you're handsome, you're strong, and if you are concerned about your weight or your health, that there are ways to help each other, and there's no need to have such a negative feeling and hold on to that. I really hope that overall I can create that positive impact on people.
Okay. Speaking of like the positive versus negative, people like speaking of like combating certain issues, I know there's been a big trend lately where as social media gets a lot more prominent, as people start to value popularity on Instagram and Facebook, you start to see a trend where people's popularity grows to past a certain threshold, and they almost obtain this sense of self-importance, like almost like borderline narcissistic. So, what are your thoughts on this trend? On what are your thoughts on how this has been affecting the community? Because you definitely see like there are people who like hold the power in our community, and it's kind of based on just likes and popularity. But we also know that popularity doesn't necessarily equate or correlate to leadership ability or to wisdom, and sometimes I feel like followers or individuals within this community start to confuse the two.
Hmm. Yeah, so I do feel like there are a lot of so-called narcissists that they always see themselves as self-important. I do have to note that there is some kind of vanity when it comes to cosplaying. Like, it's okay to be prideful of the work that you do because it's really an expensive hobby and it's very time-consuming and it involves a lot of hard work. But there is an excess of that. So whenever that does happen, there are some people that have there's this one experience that there's a cosplayer who didn't follow me back, even though he said that he liked my work or that he noticed that we interacted pretty well. He said that, oh, you don't have a high follower number, so I can't follow you. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of hurts. But, I always thought that when people follow each other, it should be because you really like their content, you want to resonate and interact with each other more, see their content on your feed in general. But for some people, it is a numbers game, and it does kind of like affect people in a way. And even though that does happen to me, I do not try to let it affect me because overall, I do see that numbers isn't everything, and that whatever impact that you put into the community, it is whatever impact you have. It doesn't have to be measured by follower numbers or likes or shares. It's really about how much you see people come up to you and say, hey, your workout routine really did help me. Now I'm like losing weight. Or, oh, I noticed that your eating plan is so healthy. I tried following that and I noticed that I have so much energy. I measure my impact in the community by the people who talk to me and tell me that, hey, you're really great. What you're doing right now, you're like inspiring me to cosplay. I've tried, everything, but I look up to you for cosplay inspiration. So that's how I measure my impact in the community, not the numbers of followers. But there are some people out there, and it's really unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely a tricky thing. Like you mentioned, like there's definitely a point of like people wanting to take pride in their work, and it's definitely important. Like I do find that you should be proud of your accomplishments. I guess kind of going back to your answer, you could kind of summarize it as it's quality over quantity, but not even like quality in terms of like the nature of the content, but rather the quality of the interactions, the quality of the relationships that you establish. It's definitely a tricky thing. I know an experience that I had was in the dance industry, like this tends to be a narcissistic industry in general, just because it's centralized around performance. And I even had like a phase in my life after I took the U.S. title where I needed to be knocked down a few pegs. Like someone once told me, okay, you're champion, and that's great, but at the end of the day, all that means is that you were good at like 5 or so dances, better than everyone else at the time, and then eventually you die and people forget, and someone will eventually be better than you. But if you make a good impact on the world around you, then that is a lot more. That's a lot more. That has a lot more longevity. It's more long lasting. So I definitely do find that when people have this sense of or rather when people lack that foresight, how their behavior influences others. Because based on what you're telling me, it's definitely the narcissism that occurs within our community is definitely not harmless. So one of the things that I want to know is, do you find that every community has two sides to it? It's like a coin. So we talk a little bit about the negative side. Do you find that the people on the other side of the fence are doing at least a good enough job, like not just yourself, but like as a whole, do you feel like there's enough of an effort to kind of combat this behavior, this trend?
Well, let's see. I do notice that there are people like that, and I've seen other people try to let me know, like, "Hey, they're always like that. Don't feel bad about it. It's them, not you," kind of thing. So I guess what other people have been doing is they're telling each other, like, "Hey, this person has a history of narcissism, so don't take it to heart. You know that it's just them." And you could just be you, be the cosplayer that you always are, be just be awesome, you know. But I don't really know too much about what are some ways that we can combat this kind of narcissism in our community. If I were to guess, what would be really cool is I always just let them know. Every person who's narcissistic who say, "Hey, I love your content." I'm like, "Yeah," and then like, "Oh, I won't follow you because of your follower number." I'm like, "Well, okay, that's fair, but you know, I love your content and stuff." It does kind of come up to me as self-centered when you say that, because that's not really what I represent, a numbers game and such. I pretty much just told that person that, "Hey, that's not cool," you know. So that's something I do. I directly tell people, "Hey, that's not cool," you know. But other ways, I'm not very sure. But that's what I've seen.
I mean, already based on how you were answering, it almost kind of sounds like one of the things I kind of got out of that was like, if we kind of created support groups for one another, that already does a lot to help out. Because of course, it takes more than just people like yourself and others being a positive role model for others. Like for some people, some people may not have known about these role models. Like not everyone in who's going to watch this interview may necessarily even know who you are. There are going to be people that are just new or just for whatever reason just don't know. So sometimes people, by the time people meet the positive role models, there's already been, I hate to say this, but damage that's been done. So it's almost like if we almost kind of encourage the idea of supporting one another, that at least that's what I got out of your answer.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to encourage support groups, so that way, whenever there's people that are bullied by like prominent cosplayers being told like, "Oh, you're not cosplaying correctly," like when people are unfairly policing each other in these regards, we at least can provide, I guess, a safe space for people. I don't know. That's what I got out of your answer. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I do. I think creating the safe space that, you know, that there's a support group for each other. I think that's a really good way to like combat that negativity. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we're about to run out of time. Before I finish up, do you have any advice for anyone that wishes to follow in your footsteps, like your exact
Yes,
career?
for sure. So, whenever anybody tells you you cannot cosplay, cosplay that character. Whenever somebody tells you that, oh, you can't go to med school or be a doctor and cosplay, cosplay and go to med school. You know, just do the opposite of what other people are doing, because, you know, you have one life to live, and who are they to say how do you know, run your life? I am able to cosplay and study really well and will soon be a doctor. So I think that it's just good to keep that in mind, that just believe in yourself and that you will always do great things if you just ignore those other opinions of other people. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much for the lovely advice. Thank you so much for the lovely interview. Thank you for everything that you've been doing for the community, and I can't wait for everything to get better so that way we can meet in person again.
Yes, definitely. Thanks so much. All right. Have a great night. Thank you. Bye.